Okay. Where do I begin? This is the story about the most expensive thing I have ever done in my 10-year art career. Now, I'm not going to go back through my whole career in this video. I will save that for another video. But when I first began doing commissions and things, I was doing a lot of pet portraits, literally week after week, pet portrait, and most of those were spaniels. Now, this is something I love doing, and I love drawing spaniel ears, so it was really good fun. But after a solid 2 or 3 years of drawing pretty much nothing but spaniels, I was ready for a change. And this desire for change came around the same time as the dreaded COVID, and I was feeling like I really wanted to get away from brown pencils. I needed to do something bright and flamboyant, and I was racking my brain thinking, what do I feel inspired by right now? Now, this was coming at a time where I really wanted to go big with my art. I'd started drawing a few bigger pieces because I've been drawing a lot of A4 size commissions or A3, and I wanted to go totally massive and see how far I could push my ability and myself mentally as well with drawing such large pieces. So of course, during COVID, everyone was locked in their houses, the weather in the UK was beautiful, and what everyone was doing was sitting in their gardens or going for walks in the countryside, being in nature, surrounded by plants and trees and flowers. And I thought, okay, this is what I'm feeling inspired by. This is what everyone's doing. I'm going to draw something really big based around gardens and the countryside. But what could that be? What could be a little bit different that makes me feel inspired and makes me want to do a collection of pieces that might last me a good year or so to actually create? So I went in my garden. I had a look around, and it just happened to be in the few weeks where these beautiful parrot tulips had grown up in my garden, which have got red and white sort of stripes all over each petal and look incredible. And one of these petals had fallen off and was just lying on the ground, and I thought, that is so pretty. Even though it's fallen off the flower itself, that single petal is so stunning. And it was at that moment I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to draw some 1 by 1 meter petals, not flowers, but just individual petals, because there is so much detail in a single petal or leaf that really should be admired. So blowing that up on a massive scale would really help people appreciate just how complex and detailed these small things are that they'll just step over in normal life and not really think about. But I thought, if I'm going to do this and make a collection of giant pieces, why not aim to have my first ever solo exhibition? And that idea cost me so much money, so much time, so much stress, but also so much joy. I began drawing these petals on giant paper, so I had to buy some rolls of white paper, roll them out, try and get them nice and even and not creased, pop them down on a big sheet of MDF board and stick that on my easel and get drawing away. So I projected this image I had taken of this parrot tulip petal onto my paper, drew around the outline, and then started colouring it in. Now, I'd never really drawn smooth surfaces before. I'd only ever drawn fur, which is lots and lots of strokes, where this was like smooth overlaying layers. And as I was drawing it with pencil, I found that it was a little bit grainy. You could see those pencil strokes. It wasn't as smooth as painting. Now, I could have learnt a bit more about painting and created some giant paintings, but I knew the pencil medium. I knew I wanted to do it in pencil to also show people what pencils could do as a medium, rather than just think they're crayons for kids and now you're an adult, you need to paint. So the technique I found that worked best for me at the time was to go over all those layers of colour I had put down on the paper, with a white pencil, because this white pencil was quite opaque, so it wasn't really knocking back the colours very much, and it was really just blending all those layers and colours together beautifully to make it look really, really smooth, like it was a painting. But I only had this one petal, and I knew I wanted to do quite a few. I decided to do 4 at 1 by 1 metre in size, and another 4 at a smaller size, which was 60 by 60 centimetres. And it was around about sort of spring, summertime, so there were a lot of flowers about, which was great, but being very limited to how far you could leave your house and the amount of walks you could have per day, I was finding that I couldn't really get as many nice detailed petals as I wanted to. So I was probably about 3 or 4 short. So I took to social media and said to people, hey, I've decided to draw a series of petals. Has anyone got any really nice petals in hanging baskets or in their garden that they don't mind taking photos of and sending to me? And I got a really good response, but the only thing was, the photos I was getting were slightly blurred, or the lighting wasn't great, because I wanted some nice harsh shadows on these petals as well to show all the little creases in them, and I was getting photos back with very sort of flat lighting. So I had to use a bit of artistic license in them because there were some really nice petals, and I didn't want to irritate people by being like, oh no, that photo isn't right, please take it again in sunlight. So I very much had to use my imagination on where these creases would be, and also just googling the flowers themselves just to see the different textures and patterns in all of these different petals, so I could apply what I'd learned from observing those photos onto the reference photo that I had. Now, all of this, like I said, was going to take a long time, about a year or so, and I was still doing a few commissions here and there because obviously while I'm drawing these petals I'm not earning any money, so I had to still take on commissions and earn something. But it came at a time where everyone was redecorating their houses because they were stuck at home, they were bored, and they were thinking, I want my house to change a little bit while we're here, let's just do it. So I actually got a lot of work in during COVID just because everyone had redecorated and then they wanted a brand new swanky piece of art on their wall. So it meant I had to be really careful with my time. I had to make sure I took on enough commissions per month to kind of keep me ticking over, but also leave myself enough time to draw these petals in this series that I really, really wanted to do. And fortunately, I did get a pretty good balance, but these petals were so much more complicated than I thought they would be, simply because I kept adding things to the task of drawing them. So one such thing was I decided, for whatever reason, to add some gold leaf to this piece, and not just imitation gold leaf, because of course I can't just do that. I wanted to use proper 24 karat gold leaf. Now, I had never used gold leaf before in my life. I didn't quite realise how delicate or messy it is, and I wanted it to complement the work rather than take it over entirely. So each of these petals didn't really have any sort of gold tones in them at all, so there was no way I could use them on the petals themselves, and I think it would have looked a bit patchy and weird. So I thought, let's do a square of gold leaf around each petal to kind of frame it within the frame. But I wanted that square to slightly tuck behind the petals a little bit because I didn't want them going over the top. I didn't want it to go right the way around the outside of these petals because I thought that's just going to box them in, because it's this lovely flowing piece of nature, and then just sticking it in a box, it almost felt like I was confining that petal into this space, and I didn't want it to feel like that. I wanted it to have that bit of freedom. So I had a bit of a practice with this gold leaf and got to grips with it fairly quickly. It wasn't too difficult to use, but as I wanted this square, this perfect, really neat straight edged square around these petals, it was going to be a bit of a challenge because gold leaf isn't really a very predictable thing to use. It likes to kind of go everywhere. So after I had completed a petal and spent weeks on it, I laid it down flat on top of my dining table, and then I stuck tape all over the paper. Now, the tape I used is called painter's tape, and you just get it in any DIY store, and it's the delicate surface type, so it doesn't rip paper. So I stuck this all over my paper in a square shape, so I get a nice square line of gold leaf around it. And then in those gaps between each bit of tape, I painted down the gold leaf size, which is the gold leaf adhesive. And when I first did this was a really daunting moment, because like I said, I had spent weeks on this piece, then I'd stuck tape down on it and then painted glue all over the paper, so there was literally no going back. But then when I started to apply the gold leaf, it all started to come together quite nicely and it seemed to be working quite well. I was really happy with how it was going. So I popped that gold leaf down and then I left it about an hour or two and then really carefully peeled back that tape so it didn't rip off any of that gold leaf. And then all I needed to do was brush away any excess gold leaf and there we had it. But not quite, because I'm a perfectionist and I wanted it to be just so. And there were a few little gaps with each of the petals in that gold leaf that I had to fill in, including on those really straight edges as well. So I had to freehand really carefully paint in a bit of that gold leaf glue and then stick down the gold leaf on top, and it worked perfectly fine, fortunately. But I did find that there were little bits of gold leaf sticking to parts of the paper that I didn't want to be there. I don't know how they were stuck down. They were in places where I hadn't put any glue, so I don't know if teeny weeny glue splashes had just ended up in random bits. But I found out that if I just used this painter's tape and just stuck it over the top of those bits I didn't want and peeled it off, it just took it straight off the paper. Fortunately, because I was having a little bit of a stress at one point. But the end result of these petals with this gold leaf around them looked absolutely epic. I was so proud of how they were looking and so happy. And I couldn't quite believe that I had created this piece of art myself, as it was so different to drawing spaniels, their brown curly ears, and suddenly I'm drawing brightly colourful, smooth, massive pieces. But this was just the drawing and this was not the end of the project. So as I was creating these huge pieces, and it was quite a big deal for me at the time, making this massive collection, I really wanted to document it all. So I filmed everything, literally everything, and decided that I wanted to create a little film about each petal that I'd made. But to do that, I wanted to base the films on a bit of a theme and have a bit of a theme to the collection rather than just being these petals. So I started racking my brains again, because these petals looked like they were almost living beings, like dancers, and there just seemed to be emotion behind them, which I really liked, and that was what I was personally taking away while I was drawing these. It just seemed to kind of happen. I wasn't going all woo-woo with my drawings, me oh yes, this piece has this really deep meaning of life and nature, and we're all people on the wind and stuff like that. It's no, not quite like that. But obviously during COVID, everyone was missing their families and their family connections, and they were trying to keep in contact with each other. So I wanted to base the titles of the petals around that sort of thing. So I came up with the idea of titling each petal with a different personality trait. So at the end of this collection of 8 petals, they would all be different, like different people in a family, but each one brings their own personality to that family to make a whole flower, basically. That's where my mind is going, and I quite like that idea, really. So I began titling them with things like the Dreamer and the Unifier, the Inspirer. So we have all these people in this family group that bring something different to it. So the Unifiers were helping keep people together during COVID, and probably were the ones arranging most of the Zoom calls and things. The Dreamers are the ones, dreaming of slightly different life, or just dreaming of post-COVID, or just dreaming of what they were going to have for dinner, So each of these mini feature films were based around that. So I filmed everything I drew, but then I went out on walks and was filming a lot in the countryside and then narrating these videos as well, and put them all up on my YouTube channel, not this one. I have another one which I don't really post to very much, but they are all up on there, so I will leave a link in the description below if you want to go and have a look at all 8 videos. Plus, I created a bit of a behind the scenes in the making of the series. And then all I needed to do was title the entire collection, and the title for that came to me quite quickly. Only one thing really came to mind and it just fit it perfectly, and that was Confetti. So I had my Confetti collection, complete with mini feature films, and then I really wanted to get them out there, get my solo exhibition going, and just have this huge event. I didn't want it to just be in a gallery and people come and look at the picture on the wall and be like, oh, that looks nice, you know, and then leave. I wanted it to be more of an experience. So I spent weeks and weeks looking for venues, which was a little bit unsuccessful because having 8 giant artworks that still needed framing at this point as well, so they're going to be even bigger and heavier, it was a bit of a mission to find a space that was going to be big enough to house them all, but also in a public area, so you'd get walk-ins and not just have it in some like random village hall out in the middle of nowhere where no one's going to know about it apart from the people who maybe would follow me on social media at the time. So I searched and searched, and then eventually I found a venue which had just opened, and I don't think it had any events in it at that period in time. And this was now just coming out of the major COVID lockdowns. And this venue was in Worcester, in Worcestershire in the UK. And it was the Cathedral at Worcester. And they'd just opened this new room in this undercroft, sort of underneath the cathedral, for different events that you could hire out. And it was gorgeous. It was all bricked inside. There was like brick columns. It was so pretty. And I looked at it, fell in love, and I thought, yes. So I went to view this venue, and that was it. I knew that that was the venue, that was the one, that's where my artwork was going to be. And then I kind of got home and thought, wow, it's my first ever exhibition going to be in this massive cathedral. That's just insane, to be honest. I mean, it still blows me away, but it's just mental. So I checked the price of the cathedral, the dates, and how long I actually wanted the exhibition on for, and worked out that what I could realistically afford was to have it open for 3 days over a weekend, plus have an opening night as well. But that still cost me a few grand, I can tell you that now. So then came the task of actually putting on the exhibition. I had an empty room. There was no way to put any nails or screws in the walls, so how am I going to hang my artwork? And then, like I said, I wanted it to be an experience for people as well, so how am I going to make that experience? What am I going to do? But first I thought, I'm just going to take them to the framer, have them start to be framed, sort all that out, and then I can sort out all these little logisticy details. But I had the issue of these humongous pieces, and my normal local framer will not frame pieces this big because they're quite a commercial framer, so they're good for all the smaller pieces, but anything like this, it's like no, which I can't blame them, to be honest, because I wouldn't want that daunting task of framing them. But fortunately, there happens to be another framer about half an hour away from me, and he specialises in framing giant pieces, and then will take these pieces all over the world to hang them in like these ridiculously big houses in like Dubai and all sorts. Like the places he's been are just incredible. So I took them to him, and we went through a lot of different frame mouldings, so like the actual wooden frame itself, we went through loads of those. I knew I wanted quite a modern chunky wooden frame, so we had a good look through what he had, and then I decided I wanted it to be a specific colour. So I wanted it to be white, which doesn't sound too difficult, but he didn't have any white mouldings in the size and the chunkiness of wood that I wanted. They were all just natural wood. which didn't really fit with the look of these petals because they were quite clean and modern and nice. But then he said he could paint them, so I was like, brilliant. Then he brings out a book of Faro and Ball paint swatches and says, here you go, here's about 20 whites. You can choose one of these. And I was like, okay. Oh man. So I was there for a bit trying to choose a white, and in the end, I think the white we chose was called Wimborne White. But I have a little like sample pot of it upstairs as well, so like any of the confetti pieces that I still have, if they need touching up on the frames, I can just do that, which is quite nice. So I dropped all my art off with him, left it with him to be framed, and then it was time to figure out this experience. So as it was all very garden themed, I wanted to decorate the cathedral room like that. So I started off with the idea of having a big garden arch above the doorway where you took the steps down into this room where I'd be having the exhibition. So I thought, okay, that's cool, because then it will show people that there's something down there and hopefully they'll make their way down those steps. Then I thought, I have all these mini feature films of each of these petals and the story behind them, so I'd like to have those showing at the exhibition as well. But I don't want just like a TV at the side of the room, you know, with like a chair or two and people kind of like, yeah, whatever. I was like, I want to decorate the whole area. So I had a TV in the corner of the room, but I spent a lot of time on Facebook Marketplace buying lots of secondhand decorations and things, because I decorated that whole corner as if it was a bit of an outdoor cinema. So I bought a big green rug. Now, this green is not the type of green you really want in your house. It was quite a bright green, but sort of grassy coloured at the same time. It looked quite nice for what I needed it for. So I had this massive rug out, and then bought a pretty white metal garden bench, which I had placed on this rug. But I was like, do you know what? I really fancy having some bean bags as well. So again, I scoured Facebook Marketplace and I was buying multicoloured bean bags. So like a bright blue one and a bright pink one, and just decorated that whole area with this rug and the bench and the bean bags, and then had the TV on the wall, and just made it a little bit more fun for people to kind of sit there. And we had a few little indoor trees as well by the bench, and just really make it look pretty. So that was one side of the room. And then on the other side of the room, I thought it might be quite nice to have a little sort of colouring station. So anyone that comes in and feels inspired by what they've seen around the room can have a go at colouring their own flowers and petals in, essentially. But then I didn't want people just to randomly scribble and rush these flowers and petals that they're drawing. I wanted them to have some sort of meaning behind them, so people take a bit more care over them and enjoy the whole process. So with this space I'd hired, there was the big room and then a little sort of smaller room, which is a bit of an alleyway slash room, that then went into a sort of medium-sized room, and I had the entire space hired out. So that kind of middle alleyway room was a bit blank, really. There wasn't much in there, and I wanted to entice people through into the other room so they knew they could continue going through this room. And then came the idea of having a wishing tree in the middle of this little room. Now, I had a really nice white tree that had been at my wedding, and it had all little lights on the ends and little flowers on all the ends, and it was really, really pretty, and I hadn't used it for like 5 years at this point, and I thought that'll be perfect. So I measured up and I made sure it would fit in this little room, and it did. I was like, amazing. So then the idea was to have this colouring station where I would buy lots of white flower tags, so people colour in on the one side and then write something nice on the back, like a wish, or just something they were looking forward to after lockdown, or just things that they were grateful for in their life. I wanted to keep it all really nice and positive. Now, at this time, I was already an ambassador for Derwent Art, so I was quite fortunate in that, because I was liaising with them backwards and forwards, and they really wanted to get involved with this exhibition, which was nice. So they kindly sent me a load of pencils, like of different ranges, and I had them all out out on this table in nice pots, and then people could come over and use these really nice pencils to create their flowers and little wishes with, which was amazing, to be honest. I couldn't quite believe that it was my first exhibition and such a big pencil brand was getting involved in it. Again, that was very much a pinch me kind of moment. So I had something funky in the first room with the whole outdoor themed cinema area and the colouring station. I had something in that smaller room, which was the wishing tree. So I needed something in that far medium-sized room where all the smaller petals were based to, again, entice people through, make it a little bit fun and interactive in there, so it wasn't just a sort of plain room with art in that no one really wanted to spend that much time in. And then I thought I would love to have a swing at this exhibition. So I bought myself another massive green rug, had that down on the floor in this room, and bought a swing stand and a really nice wooden seated swing with macrame ropes going from the top of this swing stand down to this nice wooden seat. And then decorated that swing stand with loads and loads of fake flower garlands, and it looked so pretty. But unfortunately, because I couldn't attach it to the floor, I couldn't really allow people to actually swing on it because it would have just gone over or someone would have got hurt. So I had to have a bit of a sign up on there saying, please do not swing on this swing. But it became the selfie swing. So I had a sign on it, which was my website, I think, and then my Instagram handle and my Facebook handle. And then when people sat on the swing, had their photo taken and then put it on social media, obviously in all these pictures would be my social media details as well, which was great. And people loved that swing. I mean, the amount of photos I got sent from that swing was amazing. It was so much fun. So I had all the ideas, I had everything ready to go, but I still didn't have any way of hanging my artwork. Now, I was and still am a member of the Wildlife Art Society International based in Gloucester, which was not very far from Worcester at all. I think it's about half an hour from Worcester, if that. And they have these really nice sort of Hessian, massive picture boards that they use for their annual exhibition. Now, these things are super heavy, but they're really sturdy and they were perfect. They're just what I needed to have at my exhibition. So after their annual exhibition, which was a couple of months before my solo, I was like, please, 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 can I borrow these boards and I'll bring them back? I really need them to hang my work on. And they were more than happy to lend them to me. All they asked was that I donate some money to one of the charities that they support, which was totally fair enough. And on top of that, they advertised my exhibition around the whole of the society, which has hundreds of members, which was so, so nice. And this is one of those times where having those connections really, really helps. And it's amazing the amount of people you get to know, the more help you get and the more recommendations you get. And the art community is just lovely. Everyone really wants to help each other out. So I felt so grateful to be a part of that when putting this whole exhibition together. But then because these boards were so super heavy and massive, I needed a van to get them. And vans are expensive to hire, and I didn't have my van at the time. So I asked my father-in-law very, very nicely, who works for a company who do a lot of like county fairs and shows like that. So they have their own big sort of lorry van thing, and he very kindly went to collect the boards for me and brought them over in his van, which was really nice and definitely helped me a lot because I didn't know what I was going to do otherwise. So this was the whole exhibition coming together now, but I also needed to invite people. So I had an opening night planned and really wanted to get a lot of people there, but at this time, it was kind of just before I really started making a lot of connections. I think it was a fantastic learning experience for me, but I definitely did this exhibition slightly before my time, if that makes sense. Like if I did it now, I think it'd be quite different and I'd get very different people there. So I wanted to obviously charge a lot of money for these pieces that I'd done because they'd cost me so much to make. They had taken up so much of my time, but at that time I didn't have those sort of wealthier connections with collectors and people that would buy them, so I was more hoping there'd be walk-ins that would just have all this money and want to buy my art. But that didn't stop me from inviting some wealthier, well-known, richer people. So I decided to essentially hand make the invitations for the exhibition. I wanted it all to be very classy, have all these personal touches to them. So I designed these really nice invites that had gold edging on them to match the gold leaf on the petals, and then left a little space to have a dried flower. So I bought a pack of these really beautiful dried flowers and I glued them on all individually, all on these invites. And then I learnt calligraphy because I wanted to use calligraphy to handwrite everybody's names to make it look really nice and personal but professional and fancy. So when they arrived in the post, people didn't just chuck them away thinking it was just a random piece of mail that they were from someone that's trying to sell to them. So by handwriting it all, people kind of take a bit more note of that and want to open it and see what's inside. And then having it look like a really nice invite with this dried flower on is more likely something that people will keep. So I started sending out all these invites to big businesses in the Worcester area, hoping that I get kind of, you know, top-end accountants and top-end people from marketing firms and anyone that might have a bit of money like come to the exhibition. But I didn't stop there. I decided to start inviting celebrities as well. So I went online and I found PO boxes for all these different celebrities. So I invited people like David Attenborough, and I also invited the Queen, who was alive at the time. So yeah, I sent one of my invites off to Buckingham Palace. I didn't hear a thing back, but I thought, well, why not? I sent one to Will and Kate as well, just in case. Again, didn't hear back from them. But there was one celebrity that did reply, and that was Dame Judi Dench. Yes, I invited Judi Dench to my exhibition, and she actually got back to me. So now she's my favourite celebrity ever. I mean, the fact that she replied was amazing. Now, unfortunately, she couldn't make it. Apparently, it clashed with something else in her schedule. But she wished me luck for the exhibition, and to be honest, that is all I needed. It was just amazing. So as well as all these people I invited, I also wanted this exhibition to be in the news a little bit, get a bit more publicity, and also have like a really official opening. So I invited the Mayor of Worcester, and he came back to me and said yes, him and his wife would be delighted to attend and officially open my exhibition. And this meant it would also be in the newspapers the next day and over their social media as well. And I was like, what's happening? This is my first solo exhibition and I've got Derwent helping me out here. And then the Mayor of Worcester is coming to this massive cathedral that my exhibition's in to officially open it. And it's just insane. I was so like high on life and my art and my work at the time, and I was like, this is the best thing ever. Like, I love my job, and I still love my job, but it was just one of those moments that just felt really surreal. So now everything was ready to go, everything had come together, and then we had to actually put up the exhibition itself. So this was a task and a half because we didn't have much time to do. We had about a 3-hour allotted slot that we'd been given by the cathedral to put this up in time, and then they closed for an hour before the exhibition, so we had to be out and then come back again for the opening. So it was all systems go on the day. I had myself, my husband, my mom and my in-laws helping. We were a real team. I made us all sandwiches and everything, and we just were like, let's go. And I just had to instruct everyone on what needed going where and what needed to put in up, and everything just like started shooting up. The boards were the hardest thing because they all needed putting together because they were all just individual boards, and we needed to sort of zigzag and concertina them so that they wouldn't fall over, and that it made it just look a little bit nicer in the space. But I also had to decide where they were going so people could walk around. There's a bit of a flow, and it was just all a bit chaotic, all a bit stressful, but it all started to come together quite nicely. And then we had this random hour gap where we had to be out, but I also wanted to get ready for the exhibition, and we were half an hour away from the house. So in that hour, I was like, let's just race half an hour back home, get ready, and then race half an hour back again, rather than just like book a Travelodge or something where we could all get changed in. I was like, no, this exhibition's cost me so much already. I don't want to spend any more. So yeah, we had a big rush, and by the time we got back to the cathedral, there were guests waiting outside. And I had to shoot in and turn on all the lights on like the wishing tree inside, and all the spotlights that we bought as well for the tops of the boards. They were shining onto the art nicely, lighting it all up. And I was in heels and I was like running through this cathedral with no one else around. It felt like I was in Hogwarts, just running in heels. And I was like, I need to turn on all these lights. And then we got in there, sorted it all out, and realised that no one was coming in. And I was like, where's everyone? So I had to like walk all the way back through the cathedral outside, and I was like, you're welcome to come into my exhibition, you know, follow me. So everyone came in, and then the mayor came in, and I had quite a good opening night, you know. I can't remember how many people came, but it was a full room, and it was very like overwhelming in a good way. I was like, all these people are here to look at the work that I've been creating over the past year. This is crazy. And it was so nice to have all that support from people as well. Like, a lot of people were wearing masks, which was fair enough. I totally get that. But some people had travelled quite a way, and it was the first time they'd travelled that far in a long time because of all the different lockdowns. And it was just so nice to have everyone there together. It almost felt like the theme of the exhibition of bringing people together had actually brought people together physically. Now, the only thing that I would change about that opening night was probably not inviting the mayor. Even though it was a really cool thing to do, helped with publicity, and then I could actually say that the mayor opened my solo exhibition, I found that because he was quite sort of an important person and he'd come especially for me, I just felt that I couldn't really leave him, you know? Like, I wanted to go around and chat to a lot of people, but he was obviously very interested in what I was doing, and his wife was interested in what I was doing, and we were getting photos together. And it kind of took up a lot of my time that evening, so I didn't really get to mingle and chat with other people as much as I wanted to. But other than that, it all went really well, and it was still great to have him there. I mean, he was quite an eccentric person, I will say, but, you know, I guess maybe mayors are, they have to kind of be a little bit eccentric, I guess. So then the opening night went brilliantly, and then we opened the next morning, a little bit tired from the setup and actually the preparation for the exhibition, and then that opening night, but I was like so raring to go. We had a little clicky counter thing, so we knew how many people were coming in as well. And just before we opened, the cathedral staff came round because they wanted to have a look at the exhibition as well. Now, my artwork obviously had to be priced quite high, like I said. So the larger pieces were priced at £8,000 each, and the smaller pieces were priced at, I think, £4,500 each. And the first member of staff that came in was this older guy, and he kind of like came in and he was looking really close at the art and everything, and I was like, oh cool, like first person looking, you know, first member of the public sort of thing. And the first thing that came out of his mouth was, that's a bit expensive, isn't it? And then just walked off after looking at the first piece. And I was like, really? I was like, I've spent a year of my life dedicated to this exhibition, making these pieces. But I was like, I'm not going to let it get to me. It's fine. Other people come in, I'm sure everyone's going to enjoy themselves and like it. And they did. I had 3 great days of people streaming into the exhibition, watching the films, which, to be honest, I got a bit fed up with by the end, because there was 9 films on a loop constantly for 3 days of me just hearing my own voice narrating them. So yeah, I got a bit sick of my own voice in the end. But people loved the colouring station. People were putting so many nice petals on the tree, people loved the swing, and everyone loved my art. I got so many nice compliments, and I also had a guest book so people could write in it and say what they thought about the art and the exhibition as a whole. It was just so great. And at the end of the exhibition, we looked at the clicky counters that we had, and over 1,000 people had come through in those 3 days, which I was so proud of. The fact that I designed this exhibition and marketed it all myself. I hadn't employed any marketing company or anything like that. I literally just used my own sort of initiative to market it. So yeah, it was great. Now, as I hope that lots of people would come to the exhibition and enjoy it and want to support me in some way rather than just coming to the exhibition and just looking at the art, because I knew most people would not be able to afford the artwork that was there, I wanted to give something for people to buy if they wanted to and if they like the artworks. Now, I didn't want to go and make a load of prints of these pieces because as much as prints are great, they're a bit of a faff and it's hard to kind of keep track of how many editions you have left, and also I didn't know how many to buy of each one and have at the exhibition, and then if I had a load and they didn't sell, then I'd just end up with them all back in my studio taking up space. So I decided instead to create a book. So this is another task I gave myself before the exhibition, which again, I just really went for it, to be honest. I was just like, let's just keep doing stuff and create more work for myself. But again, it was really quite fun. So in this book, I had the story behind this whole range of drawings and what each one meant and what the titles meant, and then photos of the artwork developing as well, because I thought it'd be nice for people to see. It's a little coffee table book, and I had a picture of one of the petals on the front and had a bit of gold detail for the lettering saying Confetti on the front cover, and they looked really nice. So I sold these for £30 at my exhibition, and I sold a fair few, and I'd signed each one of them and numbered them as well because they were limited edition. But I still have a few of those in my studio, and they're not on my website at the moment, but if you're interested and you would like one potentially, just comment below or message me or let me know. So then the exhibition sadly came to an end and we had to shut the doors. Even though people were still trying to come in, we had very limited time to pack down, and we had our set closing time, which I'd put everywhere. I was like, we closed at 5 o'clock. We had to be out by, I think, 6:30 or something like that, so we didn't really have very long to pack away. So we shut the doors and we had people knocking on them trying to come in, and we're like, I'm sorry, but you can't come in, you should have come earlier. And I hadn't sold any of the pieces, so I was a bit gutted in that way because it cost me £2,000 to frame them all, because framing is not cheap and there's a lot of glass, and it cost me about the same to hire the exhibition space, plus paying for all the decorations and the materials I used for the artwork and the books and everything. And in the end, the total for this exhibition came to about £5,000. So that was a lot. And then afterwards, they were taking up loads of room in my studio. So I thought I need to get these out and somewhere where people can see and buy them, hopefully. And I contacted a few galleries, and I'd never been in a gallery before, so I was a bit skeptical because I've heard a lot of bad things about artists and galleries, and the galleries sort of not being great with the artists. But I found quite a nice gallery, and they took some of my confetti pieces, and the moment I got them there, they took down this piece off the main feature wall in the gallery and put one of my larger petals straight on the wall, and it looked absolutely ace. I was really happy. And then when I got home, I thought, I want to do that again. That was so much fun. So I really wanted to do another solo exhibition, and my plan was to have this epic exhibition of animals and somehow incorporate space into it, which again is another story I'll go into another day. And I did start these pieces, and I really, really wanted to and had the goal of having a solo exhibition in the London Natural History Museum. It didn't happen, and I haven't finished that series. I think I've done 2 in that series so far, and they're quite big, and that was a few years ago. I would love to get back to it at some point. So I had drawn a lion floating above a world, and I'd drawn a polar bear floating above a world as well in space, and I'd also photographed myself in a swimming pool on holiday in a dress as well, because I wanted to at some point incorporate myself like floating above a planet and do a bit of a self-portrait in that way. And I have that reference ready to go, it's just I haven't had the time to do it, and I haven't really had the impetus to do it because I've had to bench that idea a little bit for now. But at some point the goal, the dream, whatever, is to have an exhibition in the Natural History Museum, because that would be incredible. But I might have to save the pennies a little bit more for that, because I did look into it And a few years ago, it would cost about 10 grand a day to hire the space. So that's a little bit up my budget right now. Unless you're a sponsor and you would like to sponsor me to have an exhibition there, and then we can talk, and that would be great. But that is the story behind my first and only, so far, solo exhibition. Thank you for watching this far and getting to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed hearing a little bit about what goes into the exhibition and my crazy mind that kept giving me work to do the whole time. And I'll see you next time. Bye for now. Got hair in my mouth and on my eye. So many dog hairs. Ugh. Picking a flower out your garden. No. Ooh. Then he brings out a card of Pharaoh. No. Now, no. Like, people could. And. What other titles did I have for my petals? Why can I only remember 2? This was 5 years ago, I guess. Oh no, my mind has gone blank. The Inspirer, that was one.